So, electronic countermeasures, guys. So, it was found for War Thunder Mobile, if I'm not mistaken, that they might be adding ECM there. So, a lot of people are talking about ECM to the main War Thunder. Of course, one development has nothing to do with the other, but still it is fun to talk about. So, let's talk about what exactly is ECM or electronic countermeasures, how it can actually be implemented in the game, and how can it actually be the salvation for 4th generation jets fighting 5th generation jets in the future. So how would it work? Well, in my opinion, it would be basically overwhelmingly high number of radio waves coming from the ECM pod. That would mean that the radar that is trying to detect you wouldn't be able to identify any more information than basically the bearing that those signals are coming from. So basically radars work by emitting a radio wave, waiting for the echo return from a target and interpreting that information, right? The speed, the aspect and everything. Of course, these are made with literally light speed, so it is very, very quickly. But of course, it's always doing that in a repetition, right? Noticing how further away the target is, the aspect out of it, the altitude, where it is going, everything, right? And if you put an ECM pod on the aircraft and turn it on, it would basically create a whole bunch of, fake signals that the radar would not be able to interpret. You wouldn't be able to notice what it is, and it would confuse the radar, making sure that it blends in the middle of the echoes that it's waiting for the return. So it means that you would see a lot of signals on the radar, but none of them would be able to be interpreted by the radar itself. That's kind of how it works in a very simplified way, okay? So how could it actually be implemented in the game? So in the game, we can have the ECM pods or even internal ECM like some aircraft have, and then you would turn it on. Once you turn it on, it's basically like turning, a lighthouse light, those very big lights, while the radar of the enemy is trying to notice Morse code in a very small flashlight away from you. So it's impossible to see a lot of the information that you are trying to look for, but at the same time you are looking at the light. So how it would work in the game, it would be that you would get a bearing out of the enemy. You would even increase the detection range because of that, but at the same time you wouldn't have the speed, the aspect, and even sometimes the altitude information from that target, not knowing when to actually shoot a missile or not. So it would mean that you would get a little bit more confused, and the actual gameplay itself might be, kind of a guessing game of when and where to shoot the BVR missiles, and going for more of a short range engagement because you don't have that information to be able to shoot at enemies, right? At the same time, you have to think that there are some little things like a burn through distance. For example, if you get close enough, the radar will be sensitive enough to basically burn through the ECM radiation or radio waves, and you would start to notice the echo that it's trying to look for and actually detect you again. So there is distances where you would be able to detect the target even if it's and have all the information and get a lock and everything, even if with the ECM on. If it's on a longer distance, it would break the lock, for example, because it would be too big of a target for the target to the radar to lock on. It would basically try to lock on targets that don't exist. Of course, this means the radar on missiles as well can get fooled by it. So a lot of little things that can be added there to make basically ECM work. It would mean that you would create a lot of radiation from your aircraft or radio waves that would confuse radars, missiles, and everything with that. Is it impossible to avoid it? Yes. You will see the ECM, but at the same time, it's not impossible to have some ways of dealing with it. Like I said, the burn through and some other things, okay? And the last thing is how this would actually be like for 5th generations, and this would actually save the 4th generations, 4+ generations. How is that? Well, the main thing about it here is that stealth is a main problem for 5th generation jets, or for 4th generation jets that will face the 5th generation jets. So, for example, an F-35 that is fighting, for example, an Su-27 will be able to detect the target, and on the very least, at like let's say if the stealth of the F-35 becomes the same as the F-117, it would only the Su-27 would only detect the F-35 at around 35 to 40 kilometers, which means that the F-35 could actually get close enough so that it can get to the optimal range for an aim-on-20 shots and shoot the missile without the Su-27 even knowing that you were there. You know, it would basically not even have a detection. So, for example, if you had a very modern ECM, it would mean that I'm, of course, seeing just in a gameplay style, no idea how this would work in real life, but for gameplay purposes, for example, we have an ECM pod on the Su-27. Maybe then, although the F-35 would still have the advantage of stealth, and it would still be able to detect the Su-27 from a further distance, it would mean that it would only have the information of bearing to that Su-27, and not have the information of distance, and other information like aspect, altitude, and everything, unless you get to the burn through distance, which would mean that you would have to take the chance of shooting a missile above a certain distance, because you basically don't know the distance, specifically of the target, right? So it would mean basically that although the Su-27 is not stealth, it is facing stealth aircraft, and ECM could make it basically would try to make fifth generations have a little bit more of a difficulty trying to get a hold of where the target is, in this case the Su-27, and just overall increasing the survivability, meaning that we could have very modern missiles like the AIM-120Ds and Cs and stealth and IASA radars, and it would still mean that we would have a counter that it's strong enough to be able to make it difficult enough so that we have a gameplay style that can work. Okay, and basically this is how it would work. It would mean that ECM would break the game? No, but it would be a little bit of an annoyance in the BVR arena especially, and in the closer arena it wouldn't change too much because of burn through and other things. Okay, so ECM is something that we definitely need in the game. I think it's long overdue, to be honest. It's not a very complex system to add to the game, I don't think. But at the same time, it's very complicated to properly implement it, you know, in the most realistic way possible. So let me know in the comments what you think about it. You know, it's kind of complex, I know, but hopefully you got the idea, right? So just think that it is an enormous amount of radio waves coming from a pod that would confuse the radar on distance and aspect of a target, meaning that you would create some troubles for some aircraft to detect them. Of course, we have countermeasures in the radars, but that's a subject for another video. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like, and bye guys, see you.